Yeah.
Those are
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, welcome everybody. So glad you're here. If you want to take a look at our AI Fast website, there's a tiny URL for you up there, tinyurl.com/eaglesai, or the QR code, and that has all of the resources that we'll be working with today. And I'm going to give just a few more minutes for people to get here. All right, since we're all a hush, I'll get going. Yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. This has been a long time in the works, and I'm really excited that we have Anna Mills here with us today. This was the product of our AI Fast grant, which got started, gosh, I want to say over a year ago in April. And we were really lucky to be selected by the Learning Lab to launch this project and to implement it this year. This was an image I found over the summer that seemed to sum things up pretty well.
Sound of summer. I didn't know. Yeah, beach.
So we've got how to fly, fighter pilot in the cockpit, reading the manual. I really felt like this summed up the situation pretty well. I remember when GPT 3.5 came out, I think it was 2022, and don't judge, I was watching TikTok and a video flashed across my feed, and I just remember thinking, wow, this is going to change everything. It could write a PhD thesis in minutes, and I just kind of knew at that moment that it was going to be changing teaching and learning and pretty much everything in the coming years. And I think the world is starting to catch up now. I mean, if you've done any PD, you know AI is all over the place. It's in all of the conversations. And the question of how we can prepare our students for a world that is increasingly AI integrated is front and center. So that's what we're here to do. We don't have to figure it out alone. I think the best approach that we can take is to help each other and support each other and to keep having these conversations about how to prepare our students and ourselves for a world that is changing so rapidly. So today, our agenda, if you want to check out our website, we'll give you some time to do that after. Anna Mills is going to talk about approaches to AI in the classroom. We'll have some Q&A time with Anna, and then lunch is coming, I hope, around 11:30, and we'll have some collaboration time. So I know a lot of you have other things going on. If you have to leave after the workshop, that's fine. It's kind of up to you how much you want to participate in. I know we have many of you, there's 15 who are applying for our stipend. So if you are part of our cohort and applying for that stipend, we'd like you to stay and contribute, but otherwise it's really up to you how much you would like to participate in. All right, so excited to have Anna here. She worked with us in our assessment workshop, was it last fall?
January, I think. Yeah.
It's all a blur, yeah.
Yes.
Anna is so talented, and I've been following her on LinkedIn and Substack and all of the social media, and she's just a really intelligent, thorough voice in the conversation surrounding AI and higher ed. She's works with the CCCC MLA task force on AI and writing. And she's working with the Chancellor's Office to, I believe you've had quite a few webinars this year already, Anna. But basically to give us guidance on teaching strategies and policy surrounding AI in the classroom. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and I will let you take it away, Anna.
Wonderful. I think we're actually starting a little bit early, which is awesome and amazing.
Oh, okay, great.
So, because I know we'll never have enough time for everything we want to cover. Um, so I'm hoping that today will just be a really practical kind of workshop webinar. Um, and here's what I've planned based on what Carolyn has shared with me about your amazing program. Um, so we're going to start with sort of forming an AI policy and deciding on any accountability measures that you want around that policy. Um, and that's the bulk of it. And we'll have a little time for your own experiments with that, looking at, a template policy and making your decisions. Um, and then I have some kind of briefly some possible principles for thinking about how you might want to bring AI into your pedagogy if you do. Um, and I'll kind of give three examples of approaches that to consider, including having students critically assess AI examples, AI feedback on their work, and AI fact checking, all around whatever your subject matter is. So that's kind of the outline. But the slides, I can make a QR code for these at the end. I forgot to do that. But so I will make a QR code for those in a minute. Um, but I will stop for questions at the end of each section. So you can, Zoom folks, you can put that in the chat. And folks in the room, you can raise your hand and we will get to those questions. Um, so, you've probably heard, and I know there's been some guidance at College of the Siskiyous around AI policy. I found a document with a different suggested possible language and some context for that policy. Um, but just kind of broadly to frame it, I think, the idea in terms of student needs is that they need guidance and they should be able to expect clear guidance from us as to what systems or tools are appropriate. And I really follow the lead of Katie Conrad's Blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights for Education, which is a very inspiring document um, around that idea that, they have a right to have some guidance. And I think besides being a right, I have a sense that it really can be a form of support for students. It's a lot to process for us, AI, and it's a lot for them too. And there's a lot of anxiety around it, around what's okay, what's not, what pressures they're facing, what decisions they should make, what their peers are doing. So I think, offering some policy guidance is, can show some empathy for these dilemmas that they're facing. So the thing about policy is that then we have to decide what to do. So, the core of it is, should we allow any AI use in our classes? And how do we decide what is allowed and what's not? So obviously we want to consider how it affects learning outcomes, but we might also want to think about ethical considerations around AI use as well. So, this means guidance on not only what is allowed, but also what to do with the AI output if you're allowing it. So some guidance on critiquing and verifying it, that AI systems make mistakes, they make things up. And then students will want to know, well, do they have to document their use? Do they have to reflect on it? If they use it, what are we asking of them around its use? Um, and I think this raises a lot of tough questions. They continue to be challenging and a work in progress because there's so many ways it can be used. We think of the auto-generating the assignment, but it's not just that. it could be, is it okay to use it for brainstorming ideas? Or is that getting in the way of the student doing their own thinking? Can you use it for feedback? Can you use it to organize your brainstorm? Or does that get in the way of your thinking? How about fixing grammar or, making something conform to the conventions of the genre or the format? What about if it asks you questions or it suggests counter arguments? Um, so we kind of need a way to categorize and think about all these possible uses in order to make a decision. Otherwise, it's just kind of an endless list. Um, and one resource that a lot of folks turn to is this AI assessment scale developed by Leon Furs and colleagues in Australia. Um, a lot of great work on AI and academic integrity coming out of Australia. So, um, it's just kind of a scale from no AI to this is my adaptation. And to me, the next step is tutoring style assistance. So where it's still the student ideas and student words, but the AI is sort of playing roles that an ethical tutor might play, stimulating that thinking, but not answering it for them. Um, and, the next level would be some form of hybrid work where some student ideas and words, but some AI ideas and words. Um, so we might say that's allowed, but only if it's half and half, or only if you share the chat transcript, or only if this part of it is yours. Um, that's one possibility. And then the fourth level would be unlimited. You're responsible for the quality of what you turn in, but you can use as much AI as you want. Um, so those are kind of levels of permission that we might consider. Um, my own approach is basically to stick with the tutoring level, um, not allowing AI for task completion, but I have a lot of colleagues who are experimenting with more hybrid approaches. Um, so, I wanted a really clear rule of thumb that was just, would an ethical tutor help you in this way? Would they agree to do that? Then it's probably okay to use AI in that way if you don't trust it too much, right? It's not as authoritative as a tutor. And I have some resources on tutoring assistance, tutoring style assistance in my OER textbook on AI, um, if you're interested in looking more into that. Um, so I want to give you a little bit of time to explore this. Now, I will need to generate a QR code. I didn't do that. So one second. So what I have here are sort of my two favorite tools for for helping create policy. This one from Chris Hurd at Pepperdine University basically asks you questions one at a time, so it's a lot less overwhelming to me, about what are you going to allow, what do you want your policy to be, and then it gives you some language based on what you select, and you can edit it. So that's one way to sort of come up with some kind of draft. Whether or not you're going to use it later on, it might help you think through what you want to do. And the other resource are these sort of policy templates. Um, Let me show you real quick what this looks like. So you just say, let's start building my syllabus statement. And it'll sort of guide you, maybe you want to introduce explaining these tools first, and here's some language. Then you just click through, and it's building your statement with chunks of text, one at a time. So you say, how much do you want to let students use it? So that's how that one works. Um, these are templates, one for banning AI, one for some use of it, conditional use, and one for full use. So say you were going to do the conditional one, it gives you a link to copy the document in Google Docs. So let's see. Maybe probably the best thing, since if you're on your phones, it might be tricky to really work with these. So what I'm going to say is for the folks in the Zoom, I will give you those links. Everybody else has the links for later. And so I'm putting those links if you want to just take 5 minutes to kind of look at those. If you are in the room, then I'm going to go back to the questions that I listed. And just take maybe either on your phone or on a piece of paper, where are you with these? What are your questions still about it? What are you still debating? And actually, I think what I'm going to do actually is give you, I do have a QR code for this Mentimeter. So why don't I do that as a starting point? So you can easily do that in the room. So if you want to take that QR code, and it's just asking you, what are you still debating when it comes to your policy? What are you considering? What are you unsure about? So maybe just take 5 minutes for everyone to do that. Again, if you're in the Zoom room, I put some links in the chat. You can pick one and play with it. It's giving you some sample language for your policy. If you're in the room, then use this Mentimeter to share something about, and it's anonymous. So it's like, what are you still not sure about in terms of what you're going to allow, what you're not going to allow, how you're going to hold students accountable, what tools, if any, you're going to use for accountability, and how you're going to frame this to students. Any questions about this kind of activity? I know you're going to have time for more collaboration and discussion later, but it's kind of, I don't want to just talk at you. I kind of want to see where folks are, and give you a chance to play as we go.
Feel free to talk to each other.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another option. Turn to a neighbor and share with them. What are you still debating? I'll get those questions back up.
It's not that old school thing, sharing.
I guess it's like, I know that moment. That she did it great. Oh, you mean I mean, I was writing firms and then. I think that's.
So now-
I know, like, oh.
I think he's gonna.
And then I've gone in. So I wanted to add like. And I'm like, I would go like. Like, I would probably like the voice and.
Just because I know how to explain it, it's not getting, like, they just prompted it and then it's going to just.
Like, here, this is like, but I don't want to have us just like.
I'd rather go, you know, or even it should be just like.
I want to bounce around with teenagers or.
I don't care.
So I put it as introductory.
What it needs to.
Well, I think what was sort of like, is you doing a video of yourself doing it. That's what you need to model it. And I'm not even sure that is that.
Like here I have it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, you're- So they because I'm gonna have to love it. Or maybe ask them for models for other stuff.
But yeah.
How would you, what was the other video?
Oh, yeah, so this is what I gave you.
Which is good, it's better than.
If you know that title.
Yeah.
It takes a
like this.
That's just like basically all I did.
When I bought first and first, everyone's better.
How to approach the
And
student.
so do
Oh,
it. I think
yeah.
it's not that, or not, then you just go rush it. And I remind him.
Yeah, there's no way, there's no way to do that. I mean, it's not like.
Another minute or so. One more minute.
You don't have a way to say like, this is like, yeah, so she's gonna ask. It's just like a professional change. I mean, they hear them
Or for you.
from any.
I
It's
thought
like,
it always.
it's too great, okay, I get it,
Experience
but.
to great things.
I mean, some of it.
Yeah.
Email for your WC.
And how about very, looking at very. So I'm like, but you know, then I had to find memory. Cause this wasn't.
We were talking about.
But see, like.
That's why I feel the answer to all the arguments later. But you're.
I would have been at then.
Okay, I hate to cut off such lively conversation. I'm sorry, but I know you also have time set aside later. So you can finish your sentence and we'll come back. Okay, so let me get started.
Okay, sorry.
I'm sorry, I don't want to cut it off.
I know we have a lot to say, we'll have more.
Yeah.
More discussion time to come. Promise.
So
All
keep
right.
that energy. And I just want to share a few more resources. And you'll have then more time for collaboration and discussion. But you know, there's some really interesting trends coming up in what people posted. Thank you for sharing in the Mentimeter. A lot of people concerned about enforcement. How would I enforce the policy? And also a lot of questions about how much to allow. And how to gauge student comprehension and mastery if we're not sure how much they're using it. So, you know, I love just getting the uncertainty out in the open, because I think we have to be honest about that. I think it does reduce the anxiety just to say, look, we don't have all the answers at this point, but we can keep we can still build something and try it and see how it goes. Um, so further questions that come up that we could address in the policy would be, we want to have some sense of why we're doing what we're doing and sharing that with them. Where did these guidelines come from? How are they supporting learning? And if we are inviting AI use, will there be an alternative for students who don't want to use it? What if a student thinks of a use that's not discussed in the policy, or they're not sure how it fits? Can we invite them to check in with us and sort of signal our openness to talk about that with them? And then what about our own use of AI? Are there commitments we want to make to them about how we will use it? And somebody mentioned that in the Mentimeter, that they weren't sure, they were concerned about creating an assignment with AI and looking out for privacy of student data. And yeah, I would agree, let's not submit student work to an AI system. Unless that's vetted through the IT department, through a specific tool, and they have consented to that. But, what can we tell them that, can we commit to transparency about our own AI use and commit to not sharing their work without permission? And commit that, we're not going to use it for grading, or if we're using it in some way, it would be disclosed, that kind of thing. And, you can check out in the slide deck later if that Pepperdine University tool or the templates I shared are not quite the thing. This is a more detailed worksheet from Stanford Center for Teaching and Learning for creating your syllabus statement. It's also a Google Doc that you just copy. And this is kind of a chart style tool where you map out what AI use fits for which assessment. So it really helps you distinguish the kinds of assessments in your class. One option that I have taken, in some ways it's an easy way out, but it does leave me more work for each assignment. So to say in the syllabus, follow the guidelines for each assignment, because I will describe what would support your learning and what would not for each particular assignment context. And then have like a tools and rules section. I got that language from Julie Carey at Kenyatta College for each assignment that just says, you can use it for grammar checking, but not for the ideas, because we want you to come up with your own ideas for this exercise. That's how you'll start to make connections with course material. Some justification for that particular learning goal so that it's really clear why. So this is just an example of my tools and rules for one assignment. And then I always put in an invitation to run another idea by me if they have a use that I haven't thought of. Lots more example policies. So if you're not seeing what you like, browse these. These are examples categorized by how much use they allow. And then there's this huge collection you can sort by different disciplines from Lance Eaton. And I've shared my own syllabus as well. But let's get to accountability, since that is such a huge concern coming up in the poll. And I think, there's a lot of concern about, we didn't get into teaching to be policing, but on the other hand, I think from this, Dr. Tricia Bertram-Gallant is an academic integrity researcher at University of California, San Diego, and I really look to her on these issues. And she says, it's not fair to the students who don't cheat just to say, I'm going to trust everybody, when we know that, AI use is pretty widespread, and misuse is also pretty widespread. We don't know exactly how widespread, but and I think she just points out that for other human behaviors, we understand that people need some help sticking to our goals. I know that when I took an online course for professional development, I kind of needed those deadlines. I needed to know someone was going to be checking on me. I needed some accountability. Um, Even though I don't think I've ever cheated in my life, right? I mean, well, I'm not trying to be Pollyanna, but like, I still felt like I needed some accountability. Um, so I think that should be in the policy too, because students are going to be wondering, well, here's the policy, but what happens if the instructor thinks that I cheated, right? It's very common to be aware of the concerns about false accusations. Um, and you hear student anecdotes where they say, I didn't cheat, but I was accused of cheating. So they will want to know what happens if the instructor thinks I'm using AI when I'm not supposed to. Um, so common approaches to this, there's no easy answer that I have found. But often people will say, well, I will meet with you and talk about the assignment. And then sort of leave it up to our judgment in that meeting, how we'll proceed. Maybe say if you plan to refer them to an academic integrity or student conduct discipline process to let that office sort of decide, let them know that that's what you would do. If you would ask them to share more about their process with the assignment, either through process tracking or um, through a meeting with them. If you would use AI detection software, and if so, how would you use it? And what will you do to prevent anybody from being wrongly penalized, right, if they didn't use it? So these are things students really want to know, right? And it's hard to come up with, a coherent policy with clear rules. But here are our options. So process tracking is something that I'm using because I teach writing and because I do feel like I need more layers of accountability, even though I also really focus on designing for intrinsic motivation, choice, making writing social, talking about why we're doing each thing we're doing. Those things I feel like are most important, but then I still need these accountability measures. So process tracking, I mentioned in my syllabus that I will ask them to share their document history or arrange an alternate way to share their process with me, which might be a meeting. And this is easier than version history because there are these apps. So they make it a little more user-friendly to see how much time was spent, what was copied and pasted into a document. Um, and there's a real range from free to systems like Rumi and Antecedent that are LMS integrated and FERPA protected and that have students write in that particular platform. I think you folks have HonorLock for some kind of online assessments, and I don't know too much about that. But it might also show process history. I am using this nonprofit app, processfeedback.org. I met with Dr. Badri Adhikari, who's a computer science professor at University of Missouri, who built this and is committed to trying to keep it free and making it sort of not punitive. Shows a report to the student, and they can reflect on that. Or if they share their edit permission with me in Google Docs, and I have this process feedback extension, then across the top of that Google Doc, I will see the typing time. And sometimes it's really simple. It's like, oh, 7 minutes, but it's a long essay. And then I say, hey, can you share some more about your process? Because it doesn't look like it was written in this document. And that's just the next step. If you click Explore Process, you get a really long report. And I don't use all the details in that report, but sorry, it's my cat. But the level of detail does send some message to the student that we're trying to pay attention to process and that their process and their time and their effort matter. Grammarly authorship, for some students, this is familiar because they're using Grammarly, so they feel comfortable. They also get a report in Google Docs or Word on their process. And it'll say how much was typed by a human, how much was copied from a source. It is possible to game these. Unfortunately, there are these free auto typers that will, simulate typing into a Google Doc, and they'll even insert errors and correct them. I don't know how widespread student awareness is of those. But I think part of this is it's not that there's a foolproof way, it's that we can make it easier to do the right thing and a little harder to do the wrong thing, and reduce the incidence of misuse or learning loss. For Grammarly, you can say that they don't have to share their whole drafting process. Like if they feel self-conscious about sharing their very first sentences with the teacher, we're telling them that, rough drafts are and terrible drafts are good and just, get your thoughts down. So if they're self-conscious about that, they don't have to share that, but they can still share how much time was spent and what was copied and pasted. So my current approach is to share, to let them pick from among 4 options. They could use Grammarly authorship or process feedback, or they can just share their edit access, and then I will run those reports. Or they can meet with me or record a reflection on their process. So, it's not foolproof, but I think it shows that I'm concerned, I'm interested, I want to support.
Annie,
Integrity.
you have a question, sorry.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, on that previous slide where you let the students choose, just as you go through and you're grading, what kind of time does that take on your end?
Right.
Get that and check everything.
It's really, it's usually like 5 seconds per paper if I'm just looking at that ribbon of time spent, and maybe I click through and that's more like 20 seconds to look at the process report and copy pastes. But then if I have to follow up, it's a little more time. If I have to then say, hey, there was this big copy paste, can you share more about your process with this draft? Then I have this dialogue with the student that's going to take some more time. But just looking at these reports is pretty quick. There is a little extra time because if they have, I have this extra assignment before the draft is due where they pick which of these options they want and they share why. And so, yeah, it is a little bit more, but it's not what I would fear when I think of version history. Looking through version history is very tedious. So
You have
Yeah.
one more question.
sure.
Just
Yeah.
when you have that follow-up conversation, what are some various scenarios for how it plays out? Like if it's a short amount of time and you say, oh, tell me about your process, like.
What I find is sometimes they will say, oh, I was doing it in my phone, I'm not using Word or I'm not using Google Docs. And I will have to give them the benefit of the doubt, essentially. But I might also ask them something about it so that they're talking about that process, talking about what's in the essay. So they are on the spot a little bit to be present about it. I have had students, tell me that, oh, yes, it was my writing, and it's pretty clear to me still that it's not. And later they've admitted that it wasn't. That's kind of why I've turned to using detection as well, because that was kind of the only thing that led them to acknowledge it in one case. So I do feel like it's, but but they have to show up, and sometimes they just won't show up for that conversation. Um, and I sort of encourage them, reach out again, talk about, I want to hear your voice. You're not in trouble. You're not being penalized. But I think sometimes they just decide, I don't know. Um, and that's really not good. I don't want to lose them. But it does show that like having to meet with me does mean something to them, and having to talk about it is not, it's not always easy to just bluff your way through that, if they have misused AI. It's not super common. It hasn't been. It may be becoming a little more common. Um, but I do think there's some deterrent value here. So if they're turning this in, um, I do think I'm seeing less of this kind of misuse, even though I'm teaching online asynchronous right now. Um, so big debates about process tracking. My colleagues on the MLA 4C's task force on writing in AI, many of them disagree, and they do find it a form of surveillance. They're concerned about it. So we have a blog post where we kind of have a roundtable discussing that, and you can check that out if you want. I acknowledge that concern. Um, um, but considering AI detection as another option, so the thing I like to point out is that even if we're not using AI detection software, we're trying to do it, right? Like we are having to try to figure out, is this AI or is this the student? Like we want to know, we need to know in order to assess them. So if we're doing it on our own intuitively, how good are we at that? Um, and some studies are suggesting that we're not as good as we might think as teachers. I think even linguists were really not good at it. Here are a couple studies where instructors could only guess which essay was ChatGPT 70% of the time, and students could guess 60% of the time. So we may not even be much ahead of the students. And other studies where only 35% of instructors could identify the authorship of 4 different essays correctly. Um, so, I do ask myself, okay, if we're not perfect and we do need to try to see if it's AI or not, then maybe software could be helpful as a, supplement to our intuition. Um, I used to be against detection software, and as you see, I've kind of shifted on that. But I do still see these concerns about, does it create a sense of adversarial relationship? Gotcha. And we know that detection software is not actually like, it's not going back to a record of what ChatGPT put out for that student. It's more like a guess. It's a statistical guess. Do the words kind of fit the patterns of AI according to the statistical analysis? And it's been seen to be wrong for all detectors. There's no detector that's foolproof. Sometimes it would label a student's writing as AI, and that could be very alienating, right? Um, some have raised concerns that it's biased against English language learners. There's one study that showed that it was. Another study suggests that it's not at all. Um, Unclear, right? There's no independent bias testing besides these studies. So, like process tracking, you can game it. There are these humanizers, free software that I think probably should be shut down as perpetuating fraud, that rephrases AI text and even sometimes runs it through detectors to test if it will pass as human. So they're not foolproof. And there's a lot of caution in our working paper on policy development from the task force that I mentioned, asking, if you're using them, take other steps to substantiate any accusation of AI use. Don't rely on the detector. How else can you engage with the students' writing to really understand before you would give any kind of penalty for that? Um, so I am using it in a very cautious way, acknowledging those concerns to students explicitly. Um, and in part, I'm doing that because I found Chris Ostro's work really interesting. He did a lit review that suggested that some detectors are pretty accurate, even when students have used humanizers or paraphrase software. Um, and I just hit a wall where I was working with a student and I knew it was not, consistent with his other writing, and he would not admit it. And I had done everything else I could think of, right? I had a relationship with him. It was very positive. I'd encourage him to write about what he was interested in, all these things. But, I had to say, look, you haven't done the learning yet. I'm going to have to refer this to the academic integrity office. And at that point, he said, oh, well, I'm not going to waste any more of your time. So I think that was partly because of the threat of detection software, even though, they know they could still say, oh, it's wrong. But it's still a form of accountability that students take seriously, I think. So this is my statement on it. I tell them I'm aware that it sometimes is wrong. I won't use it as a sole basis of an accusation. And it's for more information alongside other indicators. Um, and that's where I am. Students have told me in anonymous surveys that they think it's necessary, but they don't love it. So I did offer this poll already. Folks in the Zoom room, I don't think I gave you the link, but maybe others want to add to that based on these discussions about process tracking and detection, these hugely controversial topics. I'm kind of sticking my neck out for everybody to be mad at me. But um, it's interesting. There's such a division between the discussion on social media about process tracking and detection. There's a lot of opposition and a lot of saying that's policing and it's wrong, it's surveillance. And then in the departments where I've worked, I would say a majority of teachers, like 80%, are using detection. And maybe some process tracking. So a real interesting tension there, I think. But let me pause for questions or comments. Actually, let me go back to the Mentimeter and bring up the results. If you want to take another couple minutes to post anything you feel inspired to post there. I will. Yeah, question, comment?
And I have a question. What types of assignments do you use process checking on? I mean, is it for every assignment in your online asynchronous, or what's your process on that?
Yeah, I mainly use it for the four out of class the four essays for the drafts and the final versions. Sometimes I will use it for like if there's a discussion post. I do find that that is tempting, not the introduction discussion, um, but I also assign a lot of social annotation. So when I assign a reading, they're commenting on it in perusal in the margins, and perusal will tell me if they've copied and pasted all of their comments. And I did, reach out to two students about that with the first post, and one said, "I'm sorry, I won't do it again." So I find that to be useful, and I really don't like that idea of, there's no check against the social experience of commenting and replying to each other's posts, just automating that. I think it's more rare, but I'm
Right.
seeing it happens. Somebody asks, what are others seeing when it comes to discussion posts, opinion writing, self-reflection assignments? Um, I hear anecdotes of people saying, oh God, discussions we have to get rid of discussions because they're automating it so much. And even when you ask something that's motivating, introduction post, but I don't know how common it is statistically. Um, I think those are more motivating. So I think it does help to assign that kind of thing. Um, okay.
That was my question. Can I just
Yeah,
add a quick thing to that? So,
please.
um, I haven't had a lot of issues with being concerned about students using AI in like a cheating kind of way in my
Oh,
classes. I teach work experience and guidance, so they're really
mm,
personal things. The assignments are, yeah, mostly self-reflection. But I was on a scholarship interview panel for the McConnell Foundation Scholarship, and it was really interesting because we had a student submit if you're not aware, the McConnell Foundation Scholarship is pretty intense. It's a 10-question essay. And so all of the questions are very personal. And we had a student that, was being interviewed, and it was very clear that she did not write. She's also an ESL student. So it was just obvious that she either had a lot of help or used AI to write her scholarship essays. And it just led to a really good discussion on, does that make the information not personal or true? Was this used as a tool because she didn't have anybody else to help her,
mm,
because she's out in
mhm.
the middle of nowhere and very few resources. So I don't know, I don't have the right answer necessarily, but I'm with you. I don't feel like being a police um, about about assignments and policing how students do the work. And I recognize that this is a tool and they're using it already. So I appreciate the guidance, and I'm still chewing on that
Mhm.
idea.
Yeah. Well, I just appreciate that you approach that through empathy and sort of asking, why might they have turned to it? And was it closing like an equity gap? Was it helping someone who had less power or fewer resources in that situation? Um,
Yeah, that was
and
kind of our conclusion, that this was an
Mhm.
equity um, thing. And other people had, college grads in their life that they could help them with their essays and mentors and people in their world. And she wasn't someone that had that. So,
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's part of why, even though I have these accountability measures, usually, I haven't yet taken a punitive approach. It's more like you haven't demonstrated the learning yet, so you're not getting the credit yet. Um, and I will give them more chances, and I will try to really emphasize, I want you to have this experience of learning. I want to know what you think. And, I'm really more interested in your ideas and how you put it together. And this is what I've designed for learning, and more of an invitation and a support, acknowledging that often students are turning to it out of insecurity about their place in college and their ability to do it. Um, and, also maybe they don't have the support. So connecting them with that human support and with ways they could use it for tutoring assistance that's not completing it for them. Um, and that kind of leads me to the questions about how to incorporate it in pedagogy. How could it support learning um, in all kinds of courses? How might we choose to use it if we're considering that? And I did want to acknowledge first that there are very good reasons, big concerns that are not easily answered about whether we should be using it at all, and whether it should be working the way it works, the way it's been built. Um, and I do respect the position of educators who think we should not use it or invite students to use it. Um, and I try to address that in my OER textbook, just pretty frankly, saying why I do think it's kind of as big as the internet and people need to understand what it's like to work with it. They do need to have some experience with it to really be in a good position in society to understand what's going on and in the workplace. So that's part of why I do invite students to use it in limited ways, to sort of build that literacy. But you can see like my slide deck and discussion of that big question. And I would say like before we invite them to use it, they do need some context. And so these are just some resources, one-page handout on AI literacy, like a 10-slide deck on orientation to AI, and then a much more extended orientation where they could browse around to what question they want answered. So offering those resources or assigning something really brief, even if your class is not on AI, could really help give some context. So they understand that it's flawed. And I think that's one of the goals and one of the good things about bringing it into pedagogy is that we might help them build a healthy skepticism toward AI, get some practice seeing where it might be wrong or biased. We really can't work well with these systems unless we question them. Even if we're asked to work with them, we've got to improve on what they give us, right? So very practical. I think in inviting students to engage with them, we can sort of model how do you use AI to stimulate your thinking. And we can look for sort of sweet spots where it supports our existing learning goals. Hopefully they're going to build some confidence and that so that they don't worship AI, that they have some trust in their own judgment and their own choices about how to use it and what to take from it. So, there's potential for a positive framing of AI if we're guiding them through some uses and sort of modeling, maybe skeptical approaches. This is a worksheet of phrases that just gives examples of, this sounds plausible because X, but it doesn't really make sense because blank, right? Like we've got to have practice responding to AI in those ways to build that confidence. Briefly, did I miss any questions before I go on to sort of specific examples of how to do that?
I think we're good.
Great. All right. So one kind of simple way to bring AI into pedagogy might be to use it to generate examples of course material, of course concepts. And we might do that live in the classroom and sort of critique what it gives us. Is this a good example of, why correlation is not always causation? And then we can show them how we interact with it critically. Or maybe we want to choose some examples ahead of time that we've generated and have students critique those in groups. Or maybe we want to let them generate an example on their own, maybe that relates to something they're interested in, and try to iterate, try to modify that example and tell the chatbot to fix it or make it better until they're satisfied. So I did a little experiment with ChatGPT generating an image to illustrate the concept of assumptions, because I teach rhetoric and I teach the idea of claims and the assumptions that they rest on. And so just a really simple prompt, create an image to illustrate the concept of blank from your discipline, whatever it is. And then ask the students, is this a good way to represent it? What does it leave out? How could it mislead students? You can ask yourself that, or you can ask the chatbot that. You can ask it to critique its own output. So here's what it gave me first. It gave me this iceberg where the assumptions were like the hidden bottom of the iceberg. And I thought, well, I like that on first glance. But then I thought, it's not quite right because I don't feel like the assumptions like the iceberg bottom is exactly holding up the top. If you take away like it didn't quite work logically for me. Um, so I said, I don't like the iceberg metaphor. And I asked it to revise and I asked it to be more precise. And so it gave me something that was more technical and more complicated. Um, Also, I think there was a little example of error in AI where it says deterition instead of I think that was supposed to be definition. Um, so laughing at it, I think, is very healthy. Laughing at the things that are illogical because it is a prediction machine and it's not really thinking or understanding. Um, so I said, no, wait, this is way too complicated. So again, I pushed back and I'm modeling that for students, or they could be doing that. I could ask them to do that. And then I said, make it simpler. And I liked the result. The arrow shows that the assumption is linking the reason to the claim. It's helping us jump from the reason to the claim. And I thought, yeah, that's more like it. Um, so a process like that I could model for students, and then I could ask them to do that for, say, a new concept or something they've been exploring or trying to think about, for a problem set for class. Um, this is another way, supporting kind of universal design for learning, another way to engage with that material and think about it. Um, so I kind of went over this. Um, Another option, this is the thing I've used the most, AI for feedback on student work. This fits with that tutor model, the idea that yes to AI for input. A tutor will give you input, but they won't give you the thing that you're supposed to turn in, the output. Maybe that's too computer metaphor, but the idea is, again, if we're supporting them to be skeptical of that feedback, they can build some confidence in their own writing choices. Um, and it doesn't have to replace human feedback. So I'm still assigning peer review. I'm assigning tutor visits. I'm giving them feedback as I always was on the final draft of their paper. But, I am seeing some pretty high quality suggestions from AI that are very specific to student drafts. They can quote from the student draft. They can describe why readers might be confused by something, what, prompt the student to elaborate on particular things or to clarify a connection. So I think the feedback can be useful. I've been working with a group also supported by the Learning Lab, um, where we're developing this approach and training faculty. It's called PAIR. And basically, it means if you assign writing, this is one more process assignment. So before they turn in that draft, you would assign reflect on AI feedback. And hopefully you'd also have them reflect on peer feedback along with that. Um, and there's a step where you ask them to reflect on that. So, okay, you read the AI feedback, you chatted back to it, and now what are you going to do? Is it useful? What did you think of it? How did it compare to what your peers said? Um, so we've shared. Oh, is there a question? Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay. We've shared basically our materials for this if you want to try assigning it, if you do assign writing, including the prompts that can be used with any chatbot for feedback. And the support that we give students to think about how to chat back to the feedback, hopefully building their sense of AI literacy in the sense of what moves can you make? Not just, oh, yes, thank you, but like, I'm not so sure about what you said about this. Help me explore why I'm not sure, or give me more explanation, or give me an alternate feedback in the style of whatever, pop culture figure. Um, so helping them get a little playful and creative with that. Um,
And I'm sorry, we did have a question in the chat about
Great.
intellectual property. Do you require students to share their intellectual property with ChatGPT or another AI platform?
I don't. I always offer an alternate assignment with the same learning goals, or mostly the same, not the AI literacy. But if they don't want to engage with AI feedback, then they can do an additional um, tutor visit or have a family member or friend give them feedback for the same credit. So yeah, I am committed to giving alternative assignments to any student who doesn't want to use AI. And also, I'm actually not using ChatGPT. I'm using my essay feedback, which is a nonprofit platform I've been involved with as a volunteer. Um, and that is vetted by our IT department. It is privacy protected for students. So I am concerned with that. Yeah, I wouldn't require them just um, to use AI, period, or to use a public platform that doesn't protect their data. It's a great question. Um, so the last idea I have for you is around AI research assistants. This is tricky because there's a big concern with AI making things up and spreading misinformation. And it's not a good substitute for search. Maybe students will use it uncritically and they won't think about sources. But now that these chatbots, they can actually browse the internet. We can tell them to give us links to things to check if something fits what's on a website. Um, and so there's this really interesting approach from Mike Caulfield, who came up with the SIFT approach that many library workshops teach. It's an approach to analyzing sources and seeing if things are credible and checking claims. Um, and so he has a couple of things you can do with AI now that really help us fact check and think about source credibility and fact checking. And this could be in relation to your course material. So one thing we can do is, tell a bot, give me the evidence for or against this, whatever claim it is in your subject matter. Um, Or you can use the prompt that he's developed or the chatbot link to ask the chatbot to come up with a detailed report on a claim. So if there's, a claim that, eating cheese makes your hair grow or whatever, and you put that into the chatbot, this will give you a big report on the kinds of sources that might support that, the related claims, the credibility of those sources, and it will sort of rate that claim. And I really encourage you to, I'll show you one result. I encourage you to try it. This might take a second to load. Um, So let's see. Here I tried learning to write will not be necessary in an age when AI can produce writing, right? So that's kind of, I think, a misconception in my field. Um, and I wanted to see how it handled it. And so this is using Mike Caulfield's prompt, ChatGPT came up with um, a list of what it calls verified facts with links to science and preprint server and nature. And usually these links do work. They're not made up. You still have to check them, but most of the time they work. So you can see these related studies from credible sources, and then you can see what claims maybe what's inaccurate about the statement I put in. And what the sources are for those, concerns about accuracy. And then it gives you a summary at the end. It gives you some related questions or claims. And it tries to score them. It tries to assess the reliability of the sources it has used, explain why they're reliable. Um, and and so it's partly modeling um, information literacy strategies for students, but then you could still ask them to check it. Um, so I encourage you to try it, when you have a chance, with some claim in your field, or you can just look at the samples if you don't want to try it. So yeah, comments or questions about that idea of AI for research assistance in your around your subject matter. Um, okay.
I'm sorry, this is
Yeah.
Sharice Bellamy. I had a couple of questions. That's extremely interesting to me. I have not been using AI in my classes. Again, our college, as you can see, we're trying to figure out in terms of a policy, and there is some flexibility there. But long story longer, I have a project that my business students are working on. And I'm really considering giving them instructions on how to use AI specifically for this project and specifically for researching their business idea to get data on the feasibility of the idea. Is there a market for what you're trying, for the idea that you have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, aside from what you've already shared, do you have any thoughts or ideas on how I might do that?
Yeah. I think it's a really interesting idea because that is a way that I personally would use AI for research assistance, but I would also do traditional searches, right? So kind of making them aware that you can do both and maybe reflect on what you got from each one. And maybe show them an example, because recently, especially, chatbots have had some funny examples of being sycophantic, of sort of kissing up and telling us that we're so brilliant and our ideas are groundbreaking.
Right.
And somebody did a test where they said, I have this business idea for making chairs with edible legs. And
Okay, now.
and
Who's
it
gonna
said,
be able to
wow,
sit in
that's
it? The
so
legs are
great,
gone. Mhm.
and so like, helping students be aware that it might distort their own thinking by telling them that they're brilliant, right? So the
Yeah,
risks of it, but also maybe they would find some value in what it can come up with, and the kinds of sources it could come up with that are real.
that's helpful because I thought to have them use AI, but then verify, through, we have resources, of course, through the cause library to kind of verify what AI has told them, or
Mhm.
what they found. Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Thank
I'm
you. At least I seem
sure.
to be
Yeah, it's a
on
great
on
question.
on the right track anyway, going in the right direction. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Great. Um, yeah, I really like giving examples where the AI was dumb, just to remind us that, not to rely on it because, even if they're going to put in their good business idea, maybe first put in something you think is a terrible idea and see how it responds. Just so you don't trust it too much, right?
Right. Thanks.
But yeah, thank you for sharing that. Was there
We've
another?
got a question in the
Yeah,
chat,
please.
Anna.
Go
Is
for-
there a way to find vetted or high quality AI tools for specific tasks?
Uh-huh. I'm curious what kind of tasks you're thinking of. In some ways, the main chatbots are, very multi-purpose. Um, but if we're talking about pedagogical tasks, like I do think, um, a particular prompt that's developed by educators is useful, or a particular platform like my essay feedback, if it's not too expensive. Yeah, so one place I would look is playlab.ai, which is a platform for educators to make our own custom chatbots. And I have seen some career exploration ones on there. You can sort through chatbots that educators have made. So I think that's neat. And it also lets you look at the how they prompted that chatbot, and you can make your own if you want. Um, so yeah, I think that's a great idea. Um, yes, the PlayLab bots don't require any login. They are free to use for the students. Um, and I think the only thing is that you have to let the students know that you can see their chat session. If you created the bot, then usually the creator of that bot can see all the chat sessions that happen with it. So it's not privacy protected in that way. There are other platforms if you want to assign chat sessions and have that be private. That's kind of what things like ChatGPT EDU and Boodlebox are trying to sell us. It's a question of, is it worth the price to protect the privacy? Big questions there. But yes, the PlayLab bots can be used without any login.
And
It's
Tanya,
not
we
used
do
for
have
training data. Yeah.
we have some invites for PlayLab if you want them, and I think more are probably on the way. So let us
Cool.
know if you want that.
Yeah, they have a really good training. I think the PlayLab, when they train you to make a chatbot, it also helped me learn about how to prompt AI in general. So that was a great experience. And just for sort of more ideas, I guess we are out of time, but you can browse the slide deck for these favorite resource collections. The AI Pedagogy Project from Harvard's Meta Lab has really creative ideas, and it's not an overwhelming user interface, which I really appreciate. This book, Teaching with AI, from Jose Antonio Bowen and Edward Watson, is great. And here's some ideas from Ethan and Lilac Malik, who are, very prominent leaders in this. And you can actually submit your own ideas and share them online in our Exploring AI Pedagogy site for the task force that I've mentioned. And you can browse other people's. Papyrus AI from UC Irvine has a great library of prompts for specific things like even career exploration, I think. Prompts for how to get AI to help you with particular learning tasks. Brainstorming or topic sentence for a paragraph or very specific things. And that's all I've got, but I'm happy to take last questions or comments. I'll put my email. Let's see, I put my LinkedIn, and my email is, I'll add that to the slide as well for people in the room if you want.
We can link that on our website too. Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to coming back to sort of see where people are in a month at another workshop. So if you have input about what you'd like me to cover, I would be glad of that as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate all of the resources and everything you shared today. I'll link your slides on our website too. So if you just go to our AI Fast website, it's there. Oh, one final question.
Yeah.
I have one question, and you touched on this, so I think I'm really just asking for clarification. So one of my concerns is that I'm interested in incorporating AI in my classes more, but I'm concerned about student privacy. And so I've been apprehensive to use anything like ChatGPT. And I know Claude isn't, if you have the free plan and you told it you're not consenting, then it won't store the information. But I could have concern about both not being open source and being from private companies. And so I'm a little confused about what educational platforms are out there that are going to protect student privacy and allow me to use a chatbot style approach to help students with drafting a paper per se. So are you saying Play Lab and then the myfreewritingessay.com, is that kind of your go-to? And do you know if there's any talk within the California community college system in general or higher education in California about creating their own type of chatbot that would be for education specifically and protect student information?
Yes. So the CSUs did a deal with OpenAI for $16 million for ChatGPT EDU access, which would allow that kind of custom chatbots with greater privacy protection. I have heard that we are in talks with Google for something kind of parallel. Okay, Nectar AI, Jane is saying in the chat, is another platform for custom bots that has been piloted in the community colleges. I've heard that people like PlayLab a little better than Nectar, but I don't know. I haven't tried Nectar, so and yeah, I think you point out that Claude, they say that they don't use student user data for training by default. And I use my essay feedback and I use the PlayLab custom bots myself. I haven't asked students to use the public platforms, but I think the thing to know also is that I haven't heard much about people using open source AI. I mean, most of these systems are drawing on the big companies' large language models on the back end. So they're, pulling from OpenAI or Anthropic or Google, even if that's not the main company. But you could look at Boodlebox. I've heard good things about Boodlebox as a platform. But I don't know about the cost. I think we will see something, within the year at the community college level, and I don't know what that will look like exactly. But we're told there's something in the works with Google.
Share some updates on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, JT is our
I'm glad
resident.
you raised that. Yeah, we should be asking that question, and it's kind of tricky terrain, I would say. Yeah, any other last questions? Right, I should leave you to your own discussions to get the room humming again.
Well, thank you so much, Anna, and we will definitely keep you updated, and we're looking forward to checking in again in October.
Thank you so much for having
All
me.
right, let's give Anna a hand. All right. I'm just going to screen share for some of the people who are still on Zoom to show our website where you can access these resources and a lot more. So this is our AI Fast Project website. I sent this in an email, but it's also linked here. If I can get rid of my Zoom. There we go. Okay, so if you are participating in our cohort, our core group of 15, this is kind of where everything will be hosted. Okay, so when you pull up the site, and this is just from our tiny URL, if you want to go there now, it is tinyurl.com/eaglesai. Okay, so you can get to that on your own. So this is going to just cover our session dates and Zoom links. And I think those are accurate now. We had to change them around a little bit, but hopefully, fingers crossed, they're going to be working. And if you'd like to access specific session info, that would be on our sessions page. Okay, so hopefully, if you've had a chance to complete that @ONE AI Basics course, the link is there. If you want the stipend and you haven't been able to do that, you're not in trouble. Just at some point before applying for that stipend, get the course done. I just linked Anna's slides from today, so you can access those there. And then when we collaborate, either right now or as you think about this more, I really want to encourage us to share our policies and AI information pages, okay? Not required, but if you're willing, you can link to share Google Doc, and either if you just want to, type text in there or link to a public document, it's just a place where we can share our ideas and anything that we're, using for our courses in terms of policy. Okay. For our
I'm sorry, can you go back to that tiny URL site? I didn't catch it.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
Or the QR code will work too. Okay, so tinyurl.com/Eagles. Yeah. Okay, so lunch is on the way. Val is coming back with that. Zoomers, if you would like, I can put you into breakout rooms, or if you just want to, hang out, just let me know. If you stick around, I'll put you into breakout rooms to talk. Otherwise, not offended if you need to go. But our topics for today that we want to just talk about and start kind of sharing resources about. How's the presence of AI impacting your teaching? What are your ideas about the impact of AI on higher ed, if you kind of want to go more philosophical? And then really, if you have a current policy, what is that? And are you thinking of changing it? I mean, after hearing Anna today, I'm definitely leaning a little bit more towards process tracking. I haven't done a lot of that, but I'm seeing more and more the AI content is certainly increasing among my students. And then again, if you're willing to share your ideas, you can do it on that website there and just post to the session 1 documents. So it's a little tricky. For the website, you want to go to the sessions page. Okay, so this is what the home page looks like. And then if you click on sessions, that's where those linked documents would be. Okay, so place to share your policies, place to share your reflections. And then please, if you wouldn't mind, for the grant, we always have to track all of our data and evaluation. So if you could complete the checkout survey after every session, that would be great.
Caroline, do you want to know, when we put things in those shared documents, do you want our names? Do you want to know whose is whose, or do you want it anonymous?
If you're wanting the stipend, that's eventually going to be a deliverable. It's up to you. I mean, if you want to make it anonymous, that's fine too. Really, whatever your comfort level is.
Okay.
All right. So if you'd like to, type in our documents, if you'd just like to talk about it, I'll put those questions up. And then again, stick around for lunch because it is on the way. And just a huge thank you to everybody for showing up and being willing to be a part of this. I know it takes a lot of time and energy, but I think it's really worth it for us and for our students.
Thank you.
All right.
Let's give a hand to Caroline.
Are you using AI?
Well, yeah. Never use it.
Okay, Anya, I'm going to put you in a breakout room if there's anyone left. Let's see. And do this without messing it up.
There's no classroom.
Mine says.
My buddy too. I love all of that.
Change it.
So like, it's really, she hits them all.
So how do I do it?
Every time I act like it.
No.
And I did a little sample.
Wait, what?
Training.
I don't know. What is she using? Oh. Yeah, so I built it. Well, no, because I heard somebody say that there's an AI that actually has a service. Do, but we don't have, those are external, these are not. So I, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And then
Curious about this.
And I don't know.
One more question.
Yeah, I think they have I think we. Yeah, it would be very that little email was like, oh, they did it. That would be awesome. Right.
I'm very grateful for today started at 12 p.m.
Yes.
Very grateful.
You know what I love? Because my child is like,
And I haven't had to hear there.
it's like, I will almost say, for the next one, I will go with the.
So you're gonna do it.
Because then I can work against it.
I just asked it. I asked
I have to keep mine for, to like it. Yeah.
because I remember that like sometimes the top can put them in. But it says it doesn't have.
From that. That's perfect.
And then it's all it doesn't. But then it says.
King of the Shrews and Nixon's. So they're all. Which are not really.
Is that like the one where that?
I haven't been up there, oh my gosh.
I did it.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think
Yeah, it says like, but then it says, I can online and I can just file it.
I'll be here for the now. We're not leaving until.
I don't know. I'm sure it has a lot of information. I had never thought about. It's not there.
I did. Yeah.
Oh, so bad. I'm so bad. Like, this is I did it. But that'd be good though, like now what's wrong and like figure out what's wrong with it.
So what?
I somehow clicked both buttons and now I actually Google Docs. It's pretty.
I agree.
Share editing with you and just.
Or specific I haven't heard anybody talk about it.
Well, what it does is they try to share it with their friends, I have a question trying to share this with you.
Yeah.
And then they have to ask a question from me for the document.
I just don't know what all this means. I mean, I'm looking at it, this is the, this is the thing. I used to know that. Oh, more, so more. That's cool. I don't know what this is.
And then you'll get.
I don't know what any of this means. Yeah, if you're not familiar with it, I'll just, I wish I was still wanted to check for it. This one, and then I go to Rapid and I was play direction.
Yeah.
And then it says go to pro for X amount of minutes.
Right.
But otherwise.
You really wanna turn it in. Yeah, we don't have any.
I mean,
That one's actually
GPT zero
So they're using this one, next results, I got a ton of other training.
Yeah.
I got
Zero, sometimes.
Yeah.
Federal level.
And they're gonna.
Okay.
I mean, I understand how, I know if they got it or not. Yeah.
I like the way she, I don't know if I need to process feedback, so I guess if this, put this in all the thoughts.
It's learning how to create a
That way we,
Just somebody else not paying attention, that can just.
Yeah.
I know a kid, she's on one of these, it's been
No, I
a little
totally-
tense.
yeah.
Nice.
Tasty.
Well, I-
Oh, yeah, I expect that, yeah, it's like, doesn't say, yeah, you know, it's-
Then I do have some that are like.
No. You don't know, I'm not gonna let that, don't let that out of line. Okay, well, thank you.
I know with a lot of stuff, like, I know.
About-
So that right.
Yeah, so I wanna get-
I'm not saying all that is out.
And depending on what you
No,
want,
it kind of- we're very
Yeah.
Like that should
It is a hassle.
I'm so sick.
I mean, these questions are.
Just not-